BC, the opposition, the co-critic of financing, MLA Stephanie Cadieux ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਨ। ਉਹ ਅੱਜ ਇਕਨੋਮੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨਗੇ। BC ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਨਪ੍ਰੈਸੀਡੈਂਟਡ ਬੇਰੁਜ਼ਗਾਰੀ ਦਾ ਸਾਹਮਣਾ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਕਈ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਨੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਹੈ? Stephanie, good morning.
Good morning, Harjinder.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
BC never seen such a high unemployment rate. Do you think that NDP government is doing enough to deal with this problem?
Well, normally the opposition is very critical, but we are in pretty unusual times with COVID-19. That said, we are seeing large drops in our employment, and that's really concerning because it's not just the people that are unemployed and that are reflected in that 11.5% number. It's also all of the people whose work has been decreased and who are not bringing in their full pay because of this. So we have a long way to go. And the reality is that government has, the federal and provincial level, have stepped in to help people and business. But as we start now with a restart plan, we really have to start looking at, is it enough? Are those businesses going to be able to make it through this to hire people back? Are they going to be able to operate? Do they have access to the supplies they need to reopen? Because this isn't a short-term problem. And it's going to take a great deal of effort and some strategic work on behalf of the government to get people back working.
So what do you think about the BC's economy at present, and where are we standing now?
Well, thanks to the work of the BC Liberals over 16 years, BC's economy was leading the country. It continued to do so after the government shifted. And because our economy, we'd worked so hard over those 16 years to diversify our economy and ensure that we had, a lot of strength in our economy, we're faring well. Everything is being hit. All industries are being hit. This is a worldwide situation. But it's really important that government be very strategic in their supports and in how they spend your tax dollars to help ensure that our economy bounces back and grows back with that same strength.
Well, are you in favor of suspending or reducing the foreign buyers tax to kind of give a kickstart to the economy?
I don't know that we want to start talking about that. What we've put forward is a number of things that include temporary tax breaks to things like the PST and the EHT to provide businesses a cash infusion in the short term to help them bridge. We've recommended that government implement a short-term commercial rent relief plan to make sure that businesses can cover their rents over these months where their revenues have either completely disappeared or are going to be lagging. And we need to make sure that government puts a freeze on any plans they might have that were in place to add further costs and hurt small businesses during these months. Things like minimum wage increases and any other plans of tax increases that government might have had planned or in works we need to make sure that those don't come to fruition so that people.
So you're not in favor of suspending or reducing the foreign buyers tax, are you?
We haven't considered that because there's so much else going on in the economy, and what we really need to focus on is the fact that 98% of our businesses in British Columbia are small businesses, and more than 500,000 people are employed by those small businesses. And if those small businesses don't have the supports they need in terms of rent relief and cash infusions in the short term, people won't have jobs to go back to, and that's the biggest focus right now.
A lot of people think that it'll kickstart the construction industry and plus the spin-off effect. You believe that?
Well, there are definite spin-off effects to the construction industry, and thankfully in British Columbia, the construction industry was declared an essential service and continued through this. and wasn't shut down. So we're faring better in a lot of ways because of that. But mostly we're faring better in British Columbia because British Columbians did the hard work and they followed the health orders to stay home and stop the spread. So, we will bounce back, and government will have to take a serious look at a number of factors going forward in terms of what is needed to really restart and jumpstart our economy. But first and foremost, government should be looking at making sure those small businesses can stay afloat, and that means rent relief and tax breaks.
A lot of people are afraid, a lot of British Columbians are afraid that you and your leader that has this new desire of cooperation with NDP, you might ignore the real issues in this process.
There are real issues. We are raising them as the opposition. The reality is that the focus has to be on public health and has had to be on public health, and therefore it was, and we were supportive of that. We were supportive of government spending $5 billion to make sure that people got through this. Those things are essential, and politics can't get in the way of that. But we're moving past that initial urgent phase. We're now moving into the rebuilding phase. We're looking at what is government doing? What can government do? And we are pointing out where there are things that government should be doing that they're not. Things like rent relief, things like temporary tax breaks for business, and things that pass on to the consumer, like no PSC. So there are things we're going to be critical of. There are things we continue to be critical of. I've been raising the alarm bells about services for people with disabilities. There are things we are continuing to do our job as opposition, and will continue to provide a strong voice for the business sector and for individuals who are feeling the impacts of this, and where government is not seeing gaps and not filling gaps. We will be there to point those out for sure.
Do you agree that BC should have waited a little longer to open the economy, or they're on time?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you believe that the NDP government must have waited a little longer to open the economy?
Well, I think that what we have to do is be really responsible as individual citizens and do what's right and follow the guidelines. Reopening is important from an economic perspective, but it has to be done in a way that protects public health and that makes sure that we don't see dramatic increases in the numbers of cases. Nobody wants to see that. So we all have to take our own personal responsibility in this to make sure that this is done right. This is not going to be fast. This is going to be a challenge. And I certainly think that the NDP's plan for reopening leaves a lot of unanswered questions for individuals and for businesses. It leaves a lot of things that are confusing, I think, for people. Why is this open and that's not? What do businesses have to do? It is very, at this point, confusing and uncertain. And so it's, I believe, going to be slow, and we're going to be counting on British Columbians to do their part in making sure this is done safely.
Mm-hmm. And also, Stephanie, BC NDP promised $400 rent rebate during the campaign. Now they're providing $300 to $500, up to $500, $300 mostly, to the renters. Do you agree with this, that this should be made a permanent change? Are you in favor of making a permanent change, or your party is in favor of this?
A rent rebate was not a part of our platform. It was a part of the NDP platform. And we've been holding them accountable for that and the fact that they haven't put it in place. Now, what we see with the rent relief or rent rebate that they put in place in response to COVID, that it doesn't actually meet the needs of renters. It certainly is causing a lot of challenges. It's a cumbersome process. So I think we're seeing a lot of problems with a rent rebate program, and wouldn't be looking to move that forward on a permanent basis. It's certainly not as it is today.
Are you in favor of making this change, $300, $500, a permanent change?
No, I don't. I don't think so. It is too cumbersome. It is not serving the purpose that is intended. And along with it, there are other challenges that provide challenges for landlords. The inability to evict somebody for not paying their rent and so on. So I don't believe that it's working the way it was intended to. And there are other changes and other challenges we need to address in British Columbia in our housing and rental market.
Mhm. Almost a quarter of small businesses might close temporarily because of the pandemic. What can be done to ensure their survival? What is the plan of your party, of the Liberal Party?
Right. Well, this is what I've been saying. The first two things that are most important for small businesses to be able to remain viable and hopefully come back and be operational again and be those important contributors in our community is that they need some short-term infusions of capital, some cash, and government can do that easily by providing some relief on things like the PST and the EHT. And as well, they need a commercial rent relief plan that works to ensure that they can cover their rents during the time that they don't have money coming in revenues, so that they can come back and be available and still be there when they can reopen. Those are the things that are most important that we would recommend government do.
Anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, you know what? I'd like to say something to the residents of Surrey, and that is thank you for the work that you're doing to follow Dr. Henry's orders of social distancing, keeping your bubble small, as they say. This is a difficult time for everyone. It's a difficult time for those who've lost their jobs or struggling financially. It's difficult for those business owners who are not sure how they're going to make their payments. But we're all in this together. We're there to support each other as a community, and we will get through it together.
Stephanie Cadieux, thank you.
Thank you, Harjinder.
MLA ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੋ ਕ੍ਰਿਟਿਕ ਨੇ NDP ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਉਹ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸਨ ਸਟੈਫਨੀ ਕੈਡਿਊ